I'm happy to take it from here. Thank you all so much for having us join you today. I'm always really excited to talk with this group. It's just such a great audience. You ask great questions, and the topics are always things that are very near and dear to my heart. I am an internist and a geriatrician. I practice at the Longmont location for Kaiser Permanente here in Colorado, and I've been here for almost 20 years now. Um, and Lauren is joining me today. She is a registered dietitian, also from Kaiser, Colorado. And we had the really great fortune of just recently attending a Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives conference that was out in California. It was co-sponsored by the Harvard School of Public Health as well as the Culinary Institute of America. Got to take some cooking classes and learned all sorts of great things, and had things reinforced that we already knew. And it's just really fun. It's good timing to be able to share some of what we learned with you all today. So with that, we'll go on to the very next slide. And, I think that more and more you're hearing this phrase, this term, food is medicine. And I think everybody kind of really has a concept of what that is. I mean, there's so much that health that food brings to the body, and a healthy diet is just foundational for maintaining good health throughout our lives, from childhood all the way to the end of our lives. But food is so much more than just medicine. It's culture, it's how we celebrate things, and it's how we show love. I mean, I definitely feel like one of my love languages is cooking for people. And so I think that we just need to recognize how important and how meaningful food is in our lives. If you could go to the next slide. So, as we get older, there are lots of unique challenges that start to come up that just we need to kind of take into account as we're thinking about healthy eating and good nutrition. As we get older, we don't have the same sensory tastes and smells that we used to. That does change. And sometimes people will like oversalt or oversugar their food to try to, maintain it tasting good to them. And there's lots of healthier ways of dealing with that, including with, lots of herbs and spices and things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Dental problems are really common. If you're missing teeth, or if you've got poorly fitting dentures, or if you've got tooth issues going on, it can make it really hard to chew and also swallowing difficulties. And so there's certainly some techniques that a dietitian could help you with in terms of figuring out how to manage some of those things. Social isolation is something that I see a lot in my patients as they get older, where after they lose a spouse or partner, or their children move to another location and they're cooking for fewer people or sometimes just for themselves, that can be really challenging too. And so some of the things I think are worth doing are figuring out some really simple recipes that are still healthy and that are really easy to accommodate for just one person, so that you don't have to have like, a freezer full of chili that's going to last you for 2 years. Um, Mobility limitations can make it difficult to stand in the kitchen to cook or to go grocery shopping. Fortunately, we've got, meal delivery and grocery delivery services, and setting up your kitchen in a way that's ergonomic and allows you to do some of your work while seated can also be really helpful. And just, arranging your kitchen in a way so that you're not having to reach up high to get to things, or reach down low to get out a heavy pot. Just, having things organized in a way that makes it easy to use your kitchen in a way that makes sense for your body. And then lots of times people start to accumulate chronic diseases over time, heart problems like heart failure, diabetes, maybe kidneys aren't functioning as well. And all of this might alter the way that you are needing to eat. And again, I think a dietitian can be a very helpful resource in terms of figuring out like, okay, this is what I usually like, and this is how I usually eat. With these problems, how can we tweak this so that I'm still enjoying my food, but it's not harming my body with all of these different diseases going on. And then, food has a really strong connection to memory, and we can actually use that to our advantage as well. And I oftentimes think about my patients who have dementia. And it's amazing how, kind of going back to some of their childhood favorites is really helpful for them. So if people are struggling with their appetite, reintroducing some favorite foods from childhood is such a great memory and can really bring some happiness and joy to everybody's life. So those were just some of the unique challenges I wanted to mention. So, Michael Pollan, a number of years ago, wrote this book called Food Rules. I've got a copy, and it kind of boils down to, eat food, mostly plants, and not too much. And I think that this is like such a simple but brilliant way of really capturing the things that really are important when we think about a healthy diet. One of the things that I'm just going to read you some of my favorite. This is a book that I have referenced later in the slide deck as well, but it's just really short, little pithy statements that I think really ring true. So one thing is, don't eat anything your great grandmother wouldn't recognize as food, and that's where the eat food comes in. Like you don't want to eat a bunch of ultra processed stuff where a third grader wouldn't be able to pronounce a lot of the ingredients. Avoiding food products that make health claims. If you're buying something that comes in a box and then in plastic and it has something, crazy on it about how it's going to make you healthier, it probably isn't. Another one I love is if it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. And again, this is kind of about eating around the perimeter of a grocery store where you've got all the real food, not so much in the packaged section, frozen section aisle, although frozen veggies would be fine. Um, and then, really love your spices. Herbs and spices add deliciousness without adding salt, fat, or sugar. So again, just some of my favorite quotes from Food Rules. And we're going to get into all of these a little bit more in detail. Next slide. So I really like the concept, and Lauren, I don't know how you feel about this, but the healthy eating plate is just like such a great visual. I think food pyramids, no matter what shape or orientation they're in, can be a little confusing. I think the way we eat is not as a pyramid; we eat on a plate, and so thinking about filling up your plate with mostly 50% of it's going to be veggies and some fruit. You've got a nice section of whole grains, and then you've got a healthy protein. You've got water to drink on the side is like your best option for staying hydrated. And then you've got healthy oils like olive and canola oil. It's doing this, you're going to have not so much saturated fat. You're going to be getting enough fiber. You're going to be getting enough protein and all of the really great nutrients, vitamins, minerals that come in the rainbow that we see in fruits and veggies. And then I also like this particular graphic because it also has the stay active part to it. So, going for a nice little walk after you eat your meal is another really great thing to do. Oh, that's fine. You can go on to the next slide. So there's like all this talk about oils and what oils are better or worse or whatever. This is kind of the way that I usually think about it. I really like olive oil and avocado oil for cooking and for salad dressings and things like that. But for cooking and stir frying, you want something that is a little bit safer at a high heat, and that's where sunflower oil and safflower oil come in. These are going to be healthier choices than cooking with something like butter. Or yeah, just because it has all of the saturated fat. A little butter is fine, but I don't think that anybody should go overboard with too much butter. Butter has a lot of flavor to it. You don't need much of it. Sometimes if I want that little bit of butter flavor, I'll add maybe a teaspoon or a tablespoon to my olive oil that I'm cooking with. And you get that little bit of butter and nice browning qualities without all of the saturated fat of cooking with like half a stick of butter. And Lauren, if there's anything you want to pop in and say, don't feel like you know, please feel
Yeah,
free.
you're doing great.
All
Agree with
right.
everything.
Um, Protein is something that gets so much play right now. It seems like there's protein everything, and like there's protein Cheerios, and just everything has all of this protein in it. The thing that's so interesting, and we definitely heard about this a lot at the conference we recently attended. We get, as Americans, most of us get more than enough protein. We're actually doing really well getting our protein intake. So this is just kind of a comparison. So whether you weigh 125 pounds, 175 pounds, or 225 pounds, just kind of a nice range in there. This is like what the estimated daily requirement for protein would be. So, if you're 175 pounds, about 52 grams is what they recommend. Now, the RDA, the recommended daily allowance,
Okay.
is going to have a little bit of a buffer. So, it's actually going to give you a little bit more of a cushion. So, they're going to say you should have 64 grams. Well, when you look at America, and what a typical 175-pound American gets in their diet currently, it's 110 grams. So we really are, we're doing fine with protein. So I don't think that any of us should be trying to get more protein. I mean, there are certain conditions where you might need more protein. This is, again, we're working with your physician and your dietitian. We can make sure that it's, tailored to what your needs are. Like if you're recovering from, a car crash, or you've got a lot of burn wounds, or, I mean, there's all sorts of things where you might have a different protein requirement. But for your typical person, we're doing okay with the protein that we're currently getting. Um,
Tracy or Lauren, could I ask a quick question because I hear that
Absolutely.
all the time about protein.
Yeah.
What can you kind of give an example or a couple examples of I don't know, like a steak, a fillet is how many grams? A ham sandwich is tofu. Can you give a couple of examples? Because I always actually feel like I'm way under protein when I hear it, but I think it's because I don't really know how many grams is in different things.
Yeah. Lauren, do you mind taking this one?
Sure, yeah. So, looking at most Americans, we kind of encourage you to get between 3 to 4 ounces of protein per most meals. And so, when we're looking at 3 ounces, I have a handy dandy little deck of cards right here. 3 ounces would be the size and thickness of a deck of cards. So, you can see actually that's, not that big, or for a lot of people, it'd be about the palm of your hand. So, that'd be about 3 ounces. And what that gives you is about 21 grams of protein. So on average, when we're looking about an ounce of protein, it would equal about 7 grams on average. So like one egg is 1 ounce, 7 grams. So that can give you kind of a good estimate when you're having kind of those animal proteins. I think with plant-based proteins, which Tracy's going to talk about in just a second, if you can check the label on those, it's a little bit easier to kind of estimate for yourself. But yeah, I would agree that that's most people probably have double that on their plate, especially for their main meal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to get protein. Animal proteins are really good sources of protein. They definitely have a lot of protein, but so do many plant sources. And I think that it's just worth calling that out because I don't think that anybody has to be a vegetarian, but the closer you eat to a plant-based diet, the healthier you're going to be. Um, Animal protein intake is really associated with an increased risk of being overweight and consuming more than you need of protein, while plant protein does show protective effects against both sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle mass, and fat accumulation. So just don't forget the plant-based sources of protein. And the next slide. I think there's oftentimes a lot of myth around, oh, well, but if I eat a plant protein, I'm not getting like all of the amino acids. And really, all plant foods do have the 20 amino acids, including the 9 essential amino acids. It may not be in quite the same proportions as you see in meat. And so that's why a lot of times people do combine protein sources. So you'll see like, brown rice with black beans, like that's a really great source of protein, and you're getting all of the amino acids that you need in that combination. So a lot of foods that kind of naturally go together, like rice and beans, also kind of like fit each other from a nutritional standpoint. Next slide. So fiber is the area that we should be trying to get more of because most people are not getting enough dietary fiber. So a big part of why it's healthy to eat a little bit more of a plant-based or plant forward eating style is because they really have a positive impact on our microbiome, all of the healthy bacteria in our gut that kind of help us, digest things and stay healthy and our immune system and all of that. So when we have a healthy diet, we keep our microbiome happy and it makes us healthy. And the USDA suggests 26 to 38 grams of fiber daily. And most of us are getting closer to 10 to 15 grams. We're really not getting the dietary fiber that we need. Only 5% of men and 9% of women get their recommended daily dietary fiber. Was there a thing in the chat?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I could post it and I realized it was just to us, so just never mind.
Oh, okay.
That's
No,
me.
no worries. So a recent meta-analysis found that there's sufficient that if you do get enough dietary fiber, you will have a 15 to 30% decrease in your risk of coronary heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, and all cause mortality. So getting enough fiber is really an important thing. Next slide. So this is one of the things that we saw at the conference, and I love this idea because really it's kind of about starting your day right. So if this was your breakfast, you would be starting your day with 25 grams of dietary fiber, which would really be your total requirement for the day. And then I'm sure you'd get a little bit more fiber somewhere, but like you could potentially get it in with just your breakfast meal. This would be 100 grams of oats, a tablespoon of flax seeds, an ounce of chia seeds, a quarter cup of walnuts, and a quarter cup of blueberries. Of course, with oatmeal, you can absolutely customize it and make it your own and add the toppings that you like. I'm putting in a couple of recipes. You'll all get the slide deck after this presentation, but this is just a very simple overnight oats recipe. You don't have to have any cooking equipment to make this one. This is something my husband does very regularly. He spends 1 minute before we go to bed at night making his overnight oats. So half a cup of just old-fashioned rolled oats. You put it in a container with a tablespoon of chia seeds, a little bit of maple syrup or honey for sweetness, a pinch of salt, and then 2/3 of a cup of milk. And this could be any kind of milk you want. It could be full fat, it could be 2%, it could be skim, it could be almond milk, it could be soy milk, it could be oat milk, like whatever milk you want. And you just mix that all together and cover it and store it overnight in the refrigerator. And in the morning, you add your favorite toppings, berries, sliced apples, peaches, dried fruits, nuts, peanut or almond butter, yogurt. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can make it savory if you wanted to and be crazy and add some kale or, tofu. I don't know. You could do all sorts of things. So that's a super easy, no cooking recipe that would get you a really great start to the day.
I also think it's great because you can either eat it hot or cold, so it's great in the summer or in the winter.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you can zap it in the microwave in the morning if you wanted to warm it up. Um, and then lentils are another thing that I think are just like underappreciated. I love lentils. I eat lentils all the time. So a half a cup of cooked lentils contains 8 grams of fiber, 9 grams of protein, no saturated fat unless you add it. It's a really good source of polyphenols, which are plant compounds that have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. And it's high in iron, magnesium, potassium, zinc, and B vitamins like folate. I mean, I really think of lentils as being almost a perfect food. And they're so tasty. So this is probably like one of my most staple recipes that I make, and it is so easy. You really don't need any special equipment, and all of these things are really easy to find in a typical grocery store. There's nothing expensive here. If you invest in, a few spices, they'll go a really long way. But I mean, you can buy red lentils in bulk and they're super, super inexpensive. You could make your own vegetable broth if you really wanted to take that extra step. You could use scraps of veggies and make your own broth. But it's amazing how just, doing something like this, it takes me 20 or 30 minutes at the end of a workday to put something like this together. And sometimes I'll serve it over a scoop of brown rice. Sometimes I'll serve it with a nice hunk of like a whole grain, yummy bread from the bakery. But those are the kinds of things that make it pretty easy and healthy to get, the protein and the fiber and the good veggies and things that we all need. Uh, Ultra processed foods. So this is that middle of the uh, grocery, all of the aisles that we we should probably avoid. We eat way too many ultra processed foods, and they're oftentimes really high in sodium, added sugars, and saturated fats. They're almost considered like the anti-fiber. So they really are not good for our microbiome. And there was a prospective cohort study that showed that if you have a high consumption of ultra processed foods, which was more than 4 servings a day, which is pretty easy to do actually, is independently associated with a 62% increased risk for all-cause mortality. And every additional serving increases all-cause mortality by 18%. And this was huge. There was like 20,000 people over 15 years. So we know that ultra processed foods are just not good for us, and we should be eating less of them. But I always like to think, progress over perfection. So you don't have to get rid of all your ultra processed foods. You don't have to become a vegetarian. Like this is all just about making healthier choices every single day. And every day is a new opportunity to do that. So trying to shift your proteins from fewer animal foods and smaller portions, limiting red and processed meats, and favoring, more of those plant forward, healthy plant fats kind of foods. Trying to minimize your ultra processed foods and choosing things that your grandmother would have recognized, your great grandmother would have recognized as food. And when we do those things, not only are we making things healthier for our own bodies, but we're really making like the planet healthier. We're making it, better for everyone. I also wanted to say something about mindful eating because I think that mindful eating is also something that is oftentimes overlooked. We tend to eat, in the car or sitting at our desk while we're doing something else, just on the run. So if we can, when we can, I think it's best if we can slow down, sit at a sit at a dining table or a table somewhere, put your phone away, and really take a moment to like savor your food using all of your senses. What does your food look like? How many colors are represented? Sometimes I'll make it like my goal to try to get all of the different colors I can on a plate. Smell, do you notice any specific ingredients? A lot of times when I'll put something down in front of my husband, he'll take a bite or smell it and say like, did you put some coriander in here? Like he tries to guess like what it is I've added. Is your food hot or cold? Is it crunchy or soft? Hearing your food, can you hear it still sizzling a little bit as you're eating it? Do you hear that crunchiness? And then all of the things that you can taste. Is it salty, sweet, sour, bitter? Is there umami, like that savoriness quality that things like, mushrooms have? I think oftentimes my favorite things have kind of a combination of all of those different things. They're really kind of exciting to eat because you have that balance of all of the things. Next slide. So just a few slides on supplements. do you need supplements? A lot of people take supplements. I don't know how many of you all take supplements. I take supplements. Um, they're pretty minimal though. Um, a lot of people start taking supplements after they've seen something on social media or on TV. And a lot of supplements aren't actually going to be all that helpful. So let's get into this just a little bit. So, what is the percentage of inaccurate nutrition information that you see online or in social media? Is it 10%, 25%, 33%, or 50%? It's 50%. It is it's a coin toss if what you're reading is actually accurate or not. Next slide. So it's usually much safer and healthier to get your nutrients, your vitamins from your diet. The two vitamins that are fairly common that some people do need, and I am one of these people. I have both the vitamin B12 and vitamin D deficiency. So those are the two things that oftentimes people, especially as we get older, do need to take. So the typical recommendation for B12 is 1,000 micrograms each day if you have a deficiency. And it's because some of us just don't absorb vitamin B12 very well. We lack something called intrinsic factor. I don't want to get into that. It's pretty sciencey. But that's why we need way more than what the RDA would be for vitamin B12. You don't need a shot though. You can just get it orally. You just need to take enough of it. And then vitamin D3, especially as we get older, our skin doesn't convert sunshine to vitamin D like it used to. Plus the fact that we're all pretty good about wearing sunscreen and hats, especially in Colorado, because our sun is so intense and we don't want to get skin cancer. So a safer way to get vitamin D is as a supplement. I usually recommend 1,000 international units a day. You really probably don't want to take more than 4,000 international units a day unless you're being monitored because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, which means you can potentially become toxic if you take too much. So it's just one of those things. With vitamin B12, it's water soluble. You're not going to take too much of that one. Some people might benefit from a multivitamin if you're having a really restrictive diet, or if you're like a kid who eats nothing but buttered noodles, maybe you need a multivitamin gummy to get some vitamins in you. But really, if you're getting plenty of veggies and fruits and legumes and nuts and seeds and whole grains and calcium in your diet and healthy proteins, you're good. I would much rather have people eat a healthy diet than pop a multivite. Calcium. Calcium is important for our bones, and most older adults should probably aim for about 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. It is so much better to get calcium in our food rather than as a supplement because when we have it in our food, it's much more bioavailable, meaning our bodies are going to absorb it and be able to use it in a way that makes sense. If you take a supplement, it's just not absorbed as well. And it can actually increase your risk of things like kidney stones and constipation. So it can have some problems. So I would only recommend a calcium supplement if you're not getting enough calcium in your diet. And I probably wouldn't take more than 500 milligrams once a day. And most of us are getting about 1,000 milligrams. So we're really pretty close. So I have a few slides going through how you can access calcium in veggies and fruits. And you can see it's in so many different things. Oh, and I see a question. Is calcium different for men and women? As people get older, no, I don't have a difference. I recommend 1,200 milligrams, whether you're a man or a woman. It's a great question. Um, and these are all of the fruits and veggies that are fairly high in calcium, and you can see the amounts and different things. If you go to the next slide, seafood. Seafood is a really good source of calcium, especially if it's the little tiny fish that you eat the bones. So sardines and salmon are an excellent source of calcium. And then lots of foods are fortified. Again, this kind of goes into the ultra processed foods. And sometimes with some processed foods and additions, you get some benefits as well. And so some things are just calcium's added or fortified to the food that you buy. And you can see that if you get calcium fortified orange juice, you're getting just as much calcium as you would in milk. Now, orange juice has a lot of sugars in it too, so it's not my favorite thing, but it's a way that some people can get calcium. And of course, there's dairy. There's lots of calcium in dairy. I think we all know that. And some people have lactose intolerance, and dairy is just not their friend. But if you can enjoy dairy, it's an excellent source of calcium. Magnesium is touted to help a whole lot of things, but there's really very limited evidence that supports that it helps. And there's lots of magnesium-rich foods that you could include in your diet to try to bump up your magnesium if you feel like you'd like to give that a try. So just wanted to throw that out there again, trying to lean as much as we can on real foods rather than on a pill that you're swallowing. And probiotics and prebiotics, there's a lot of talk about this as well. Again, I go to the diet. I think that it's so important to try to get things in our food. And so, you know, when you think about prebiotics, those are really, it's fiber. Fiber feeds our microbiome in a really healthy way. And when you look at some of these probiotics, you also see the fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir, and miso. So lots of good ways to get those good healthy bacteria in our microbiome. Fish oil, again, this is something that the supplements just don't seem to be providing us benefit like the actual eating fatty fish helps us with. So the best dietary sources of omega-3 fatty acids are fatty fish, and I've listed some of them there. Flax seeds and chia seeds are also great sources of omega-3 fatty acids. So are walnuts and canola oil and soybean oil. So lots of different ways you can get that in your diet as well, whether you eat fish or not. A lot of people take vitamin C. Um, it's not harmful because it's a water-soluble vitamin, but I don't think it's oftentimes very helpful. And it is super duper easy to get enough vitamin C in your diet. I mean, it's in lots of fruits and veggies that are really tasty and well loved. So I think if we just have a serving of fruit a day, we're probably pretty good with vitamin C. Next slide. Got a couple of book recommendations. The Food Rules book from Michael Pollan and something on mindful eating, mindful life that I think are just kind of fun and easy reads if you're interested in learning more about either one of those. Next slide. We have an open recipe folder at Kaiser. You can access it using this website. There's lots of different nutritious and delicious recipes. So I encourage you all to hop on. You don't have to be a Kaiser member to see these recipes, and there's some really great ones there. And with that, I have to run to another meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to take the rest of your questions. Thank you so much. I really always appreciate being here with you all. So have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy.
All right, so Tracy led us through that wonderful presentation that kind of talked to you guys about some different changes that you can make. And does anybody have any questions? I don't know if anything came up that wasn't in the chat.
Don't see anything yet. Lauren, and
Okay.
I totally understand the, try to get it in your foods or the supplements. But is there, and maybe it's just I do find even as I get older, certainly as we were mentioned, my eating habits are changing. I don't have people I'm cooking for. It's not, you don't really oppose supplements, correct? It's just that's not the best way to do it.
Great question. So supplements, you just have to be careful when we start taking a lot of supplements. There can be a lot of crossover on supplements, so you can end up getting too much, and and supplements can be very expensive, right? It's a multi-million dollar
Yeah.
industry. It's probably billion-dollar industry by now. And so that's all I really recommend is just being really careful, looking on the back, looking at those percentages. If you really feel like you need a supplement, like Tracy said, maybe just like a multivitamin or one thing here and there, but we probably don't need a whole cabinet full of supplements that a lot of people do tend to have. One thing I do want to point out is there we go. Medication interactions. We have to be careful. Make sure when you go into your doctor or see your primary care provider, take a list of your supplements because there can be interactions with the supplements that you're taking with the medications that you are also taking, and that can be of a concern for sure.
Lauren,
Um,
are you seeing the chat?
I
Okay,
am,
great. I'm going
yeah.
to let you go ahead and answer those then.
Oh gosh, oh dear. Good question there, Randy. Can you heard oatmeal is both good and bad, such as chemical concentrations and opinions. Oh, we can go on and on about our lovely food industry in America and sources of food. What I always recommend is kind of looking for, again, like Tracy said, watching the process, right? When we get some of these packaged oatmeals, again, it's a more packaged process. They can have many different other things in there to make them cook a lot faster versus if you just get a big bag of oats. Costco has a great big bag of like Coach's oats that are steel cut oats, or just like those big thing of like Quaker oats or Bob's Red Mill oats. Those are going to be some better options if you are concerned about some of the kind of chemicals and stuff in your thing, and that's in your wheelhouse. Then you can definitely look at some different companies. Bob's Red Mill is typically a pretty good one, and there's some other ones that you can get from some different stores. But I say typically if you can just get less packaging and less ingredients, you're going to be in a better off place. Oh, good question about eggs as well. Man, I get that question constantly. Eggs have had a bad rap over the years. The thing about an egg is it has a lot of great nutrition. Eggs have great protein. There is some fat in the eggs, though, right? And there is some cholesterol. But here's the thing about eggs and cholesterol. We've learned over the years that the cholesterol listed on the nutrition label um, actually doesn't affect our cholesterol in our body the way we once thought it did. It's more the saturated fat and the trans fats. Those have a bigger impact on our actual cholesterol. And so I think eggs can be consumed in a healthy diet for sure. And when we eat the yolk, that's where all the vitamins and the minerals are. So that's why I'm like, depends. What does your cholesterol look like? If you have a family history of high cholesterol, or if you're struggling with high cholesterol, then I might pull back on your eggs a little bit, or at least the egg yolks. But if you don't have a problem with cholesterol, then we can have, several eggs in our week and be just fine for sure. One thing I was going to point out, I knew Tracy had somewhere to be, so I didn't want to interrupt her too much in her wonderful talk there. Is one thing as dietitians that we're constantly encouraging is instead of thinking about all the many changes you need to make and removing things out of your diet, one thing we really encourage is what things can you add in, right? So instead of feeling like, oh, I need to remove this or get rid of that, have more of a concept of saying, I want to add in another serving of fruits or vegetables. I want to make sure that I have a serving of vegetables with dinner. And sometimes when we start adding things in, slowly those other things will kind of lose space on our plate, right? Maybe some of those more unhealthy foods. It is hard as we age to one, find motivation sometimes to cook. If you used to cook for a big family, I find that a lot of people tell me, I'm just over cooking. I cooked for years. So looking for some of those easy recipes, easy prep meals, like I love if you've never looked up sheet pan meals are really simple, or use that crock pot. That's what I was going to say with those lentils. If you feel like standing over and even cooking for 20, 30 minutes is difficult, use that crock pot, use that Instapot. It makes things super duper simple. Another thing I use a ton of that Tracy mentioned is frozen fruits and vegetables. Man, in Colorado, we just don't have a very long growing season, right? And So some of that produce that we're getting in the grocery store nowadays, I don't know if you guys have, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look very tasty. But the cool thing about frozen is it's flash frozen at its ripest point, so it still has a lot of great nutrition. The other cool thing about frozen is it's already been pre-washed and pre-chopped. So you can dump that bag of pre-washed and chopped veggies into your pan and sizz those up and add some good veggies into a meal, or dump those onto a sheet pan and have a sheet pan meal. So it does make things pretty easy. Good question, Barbara. That is actually a misconception. So if you get the majority of all of our frozen vegetables do not have added salt in them. You can double check that package. Just look at the ingredient list. It should just list the vegetables. If you get things that have been pre-seasoned, like some of the steamer packs that have flavors to them, those can have a lot of salt in them. The other thing, yes, is some of those pre-prepared meals, like your frozen meals or some of those quick frozen, things you can kind of dump out. Those do have a lot of salt. You just have to be careful. Some of them I would compare like items if you are eating that stuff. There's some that are better than others. And then also just be mindful throughout your day. If that's something you need to lean on for a meal because you just need to get in a decent dinner and try to make something quick, then just remember that's your big salt wham for the day, and then try to eat some fresher things throughout the rest of the day. Also, with those frozen meals, a lot of times even choosing one of those meals is going to have a lot less salt in them than fast food or eating out. So if your option is between something that maybe comes out of the freezer department and something that is coming from like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, or I'm trying to think of another quick Chipotle or something like that, those would have a lot more salt in them. So just some options to think about. Oh, goodness.
We got
Good
some good
question.
ones.
I know I love these questions, guys. This makes me, I love answering questions. I love kind of community talks because sometimes we have more access to dietitians than others. So I love kind of being that access for you guys. So, pre-diabetes is the pre-stages of diabetes or type 2 diabetes. And so it's those abnormal blood sugar points. We do really find that pre-diabetes more often is that you're having higher blood sugars after meals than like fasting. Those are the times when we start to see those abnormal blood sugars. And so some of the best things we can do for pre-diabetes through more and more research we find is just taking what we're eating currently and maybe reducing the portion sizes. So eating a little bit less, filling up your plate with more vegetables, right? Like Tracy had there, that plate method is such a wonderful way. If you guys need a really good representation, check out the plate method, or she showed the Harvard plate method. Either of those are perfect. Another great thing that is, think about our society, is exercise. So a couple things. In our society, movement has greatly decreased in just our day-to-day living, right? Second thing is, as we age, sometimes that's one of the first things that does fall off our list due to pain or illnesses or injuries or things like that. So a lot of times if we can just get some more movement in, you can do chair exercises or silver sneakers classes. Just looking, there's tons of YouTube options. I love the walking at home video. Oops, the walking at home videos from Leslie Sanson. She's super simple. Those are on YouTube. But exercise is actually one of those big things that can really help those blood sugars. So I have a hard time keeping up with Dr. Phil because I think he's on when I'm at work. Um, um, so I don't know exactly what his recommendations are, but if it's anything to do with buying his book or buying his supplements, I'd probably say I wouldn't recommend them. A really great source on information for pre-diabetes and that has been researched and backed would be the American Diabetes Association's website, which is just simply diabetes.org. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Does anybody else have any? These are great questions.
Don't forget you can raise your hand if you'd prefer to just ask it as well. Let's see. Keep them coming, guys. We have Lauren for a little bit longer, so I
Do we? Okay, I wasn't sure if sorry, what time this ended
yes,
at
yeah. I
1:45
mean,
or
if
not.
you're okay, we def we do. And as she said,
Okay.
we don't always have access to a dietitian, so I definitely recommend any type of question you have. Let's get it out there. I
Yeah.
do love that Kaiser has a recipe website. I'm going to be bookmarking that. That's fantastic. I will make sure that goes out in my email. I know it will be in this, but I'll highlight that afterwards.
People are always looking at recipes or looking for recipes. There's lots and lots of wonderful options out there. Another one of my favorite sources that we use a lot is eatingwell.com. Eating Well does have a lot of contributions from dietitians. There's some wonderful meal plans on there, like Mediterranean diet, low sodium. So check those out. That's another good option. But yeah, we have a lot of recipes at Kaiser too. One
Um,
thing I did mention in the chat is, and that was my fault for not having this information right then, but just looking at, I mentioned the size and thickness of a deck of cards is about 20, 21 grams of protein. So a half a cup of beans is about 10 grams of protein, and about 3 ounces of tofu is about 15 grams. So just so you have some of those plant-based sources, we do really try to, just I know that being, saying, I'm not telling you to become a vegetarian, but thinking about one plant-based meal a week can actually be a really good kind of door opener for you guys. And plant-based meals, people are like, oh gosh, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean going to the grocery store and buying like Morningstar burgers. Those are pretty processed, right? But thinking about things like Tracy mentioned or Dr. Lippard mentioned, like lentil soup is a great one. Bean burritos, peanut butter, sandwiches. And so it doesn't have to be kind of like buying some of like tofu. If you know, guys, I was actually looking at a really interesting thing this morning that tofu is one of the most hated um, hated food items in America. And I'm like, oh, I think it's so underrated. I don't think people know what to do with tofu. It's so delicious. It takes on all the flavors. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, Randy, you have some great questions. So switch from dairy to soy or to almond milk. It's hard to keep up with the latest advice, man. I get that. There is so much advice out there. Soy is definitely okay. Soy is wonderful. Any of those milk alternatives, we just encourage you to try to get the unsweetened variety so it doesn't have a bunch of sugar in it. But soy has had a lot of bad rap over the years, and the cool thing about soy is that it's higher in protein than like almond milk or oat milk. Soy also naturally is higher in isoflavonoids. That's one of those fancy terms that means phytochemicals, antioxidants, and also anti-inflammatory. So soy is actually not a bad choice if you don't mind the flavor of it to choose versus your cow's milk.
Lauren, I do have a quick question
Yeah.
with the butter that was discussed earlier. I feel like as of late, butters, I feel like it's kind of making a comeback. Like there was this time where like, no, never use butter. And then now I feel like I notice it more in recipes. People are saying using it more. As well as I know when my father had a heart attack, there was I don't know if it was like butter versus, and now I can remember like there's so many different options out there that they really encouraged, I guess, actual butter versus, oh, it was the margarine type thing that's out there. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, butter? Because, like I said, I feel like people are encouraging butter a smidge more.
Yeah, so it's hard because there's so much misinformation out there and where that information is coming from. And so I've seen that too, where we're seeing more people to say, oh, use butter here, use butter there. But we have to remember our different categories of fats. So let's back up and talk a little bit about our different categories of fats. So as we showed earlier, we have our unsaturated fats. And unsaturated fats are typically liquid at room temperature. Those are going to be your liquid oils like olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, uh, sunflower oil. I know there was another one she mentioned in there. Those are going to be your unsaturated fats. Those are typically plant-based, right? Now we have to be careful with plant-based because there is those other plant-based oils or fats like our tropical oils. Tropical oils do fall in the saturated fat category because tropical oils are actually solid at room temperature. Tropical oils are things like palm oil, palm kernel oil, and also coconut oil. All right. So even though those are plant-based, those are going to fall in the saturated fat category because they are solid at room temperature. So really, if we can try to do the majority of our cooking, the majority of our fat consumption from the unsaturated category, that is really what's recommended. Those are higher in the anti-inflammatory categories. They are also better for our heart and better for our cholesterol overall. Other thing in that saturated fat category is animal fats. So animal fats would be where your butter comes in, that would be where your lard comes in, or recently we've seen some beef tallow in the marketing or the recommendations of some those tropical oils and also kind of like your fat off your meat and then dairy fat. So those things, we do truly know that saturated fats have been evidence-based research shown that those do increase the risk of inflammation. Those do increase our cholesterol. And so we do want to be just careful with how much of those we're using. If you want to use those in small portions, then that is okay. Like it was mentioned earlier, we could take some of our olive oil and add a little bit of butter to it to kind of give you a little bit more butter flavor. But in all, we want to do the majority of our cooking, the majority of our use over in the unsaturated category, and kind of keep the saturated category down to a minimum. So even the most recent recommendations, we're still sticking to trying to stay less than 10% of our overall calories coming from saturated fats. Hopefully
Thank
that
you.
answers your
Yes,
question. Yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
All
I was trying to
right.
think of if there's anything else that during that presentation. Oh, I know what I should have wrote myself some notes. Fiber. So we get, oh man, GI is like the hot topic these days in nutrition. We get tons and tons of appointments for GI concerns. While there are many different GI diseases and things that can cause inflammatory disease and IBS and all sorts of stuff, one of the biggest things I can tell you that I see with as we age in population is constipation, right? Or the opposite, diarrhea. And so, oh, those lovely words, right? So, big one on constipation, I can tell you a few things, is we're not getting enough fiber. As she showed you earlier in our slides, most of us fall really, really short in our needs, our recommendations for fiber on a daily basis. So if we can slowly increase our fiber, we always want to do it slow so we don't cause more problems. Slowly increase our fiber, that can greatly help with that constipation. The other thing too is as we age, we lose the mechanism for thirst. And so a lot of times we are waiting until we're thirsty to drink, and by then we're far past dehydrated. And so another thing you can work on is increasing your hydration, getting in those fluids, those liquids, water, herbal tea. That can help really with that constipation piece. Believe it or not, I know this sounds so strange, but sometimes it's different types of fiber. And so sometimes if we're really struggling with a lot of diarrhea and really loose stools, believe, like I said, sometimes we're still not getting enough fiber. And so I know both ways, but we actually need to add in more fiber sometimes when we are having a lot of loose stools or unformed stools. So that's one of the biggest places we kind of start with is actually looking at fiber intake. And then also she mentioned probiotics. That's another huge topic. We don't there's such a huge industry right now, and they're really finding that the probiotics we take really don't have a lot of effect on our gut microbiome. And so you're much better off consuming things that have natural forms of probiotics or live bacteria like yogurt, kefir, kombucha, kimchi, miso. So there's lots of options out there to kind of get those natural microbiomes.
Fantastic. Let's see. I I don't have any other questions. Um, oh, wait, we have one more. How about protein drinks? Someone
Good
just popped that
question,
in.
Marilyn. So that's kind of what was we were talking about earlier, was saying that a lot of Americans, this is another big topic, right? Is our food industry is constantly looking at what's going to make us money, what's going to make us the next big dollar. I don't know if you noticed that. We went, like she was saying, we went to this really fun conference, and it was really funny. He was presenting on protein and how much the food industry is really gravitating and grasping towards those words, and showed this big picture of a Cheerios, cookies and cream protein added Cheerios. And we were all like, gross, what can that possibly taste like? But people are buying them. Why? Because it's one of those hot topics, right? Like, oh, we need more protein. So a lot of times we don't need more protein. If we eat a really balanced diet, if we're getting in protein sources with our meals, we don't really need added protein. Now, I will say there is one kind of place I do find that, well, at least a couple. If you're having a certain, like if you have some wounds or are healing from a surgery, yes, we do really promote to have more protein in our diet. But another one is I do find ladies, not to pick on us, but our protein portions tend to shrink as we age, especially if we live alone. And so I find that that might be the one place just to double check, ladies, that you're getting enough protein. It doesn't have to be meat if you don't have a taste for it. Again, you can have those plant-based proteins. So, with that said, some people ask me about protein drinks. They are definitely an option out there, but we do want you to try to get it from whole food first if you can. So, like something like a Greek yogurt you can get as much protein in a Greek yogurt as you can 3 ounces of chicken. So, there's some options you can do that are real food that have more nutrition and that are going to be more bioavailable, more readily absorbed in the body than grabbing it from a protein drink. I do find that those can be some options for some people that really do struggle with appetite or not getting enough protein. So there are some patient populations that I would recommend protein drinks to. Hopefully that answers your question, Marilyn.
All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds to see if anything else pops up in the chat. Let's see if people are typing. Thank you. This was wonderful. Oh, Marilyn says thank you.
Same time. Good job, guys.
Um, all right, this was amazing. And Lauren, thank you for staying on. I really do appreciate you going in depth a little bit more in all of these and answering our questions.